Good morning, everyone. Thanks for starting your day with Axios here in Columbus. I'm Axios senior reporter Erica Pandy. I also live in Ann Arbor, so I hope you'll forgive me for that. But I'm excited to be here with you today. Today's event is part of our Zoom In series. Throughout the year, we've gone to different cities and brought together local leaders on some of the big existential issues that are shaping life in our communities. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about how you grow a regional workforce that's prepared for all that's coming next. For those of you who are tuning in over live stream, be sure to follow along with the hashtag AxiosLive. And a big thank you to JP Chase and the U.S. Conference of Mayors for making today's event possible. To kick us off, I want to welcome Becky Griffin from JP Chase for a quick message.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome. How's everybody doing this morning? Good? Lots of energy. I love it. All right, I'm so excited to kick off this really important conversation that we're going to have today about how we can strengthen the Columbus community by bolstering our talent pipelines. As they said, I'm Becky Griffin. I work at JP Chase. In my day job, I run our mortgage servicing, and I also serve as our location leader here in the Columbus market. So excited, and thank you for joining us today. Those in the room, it's even standing room only. I'm very excited to see that. And we have lots of folks joining us online. We are so thankful for the partnership with Axios and with the Columbus Council of Mayors who have invited us and partnered with us today to have this really important conversation and for making all of this possible. So JP Chase's history here in Central Ohio dates back more than 210 years. It's incredible. We know that the Buckeye State is really at the heart of all the things that we do to break down barriers to opportunity and advance an economy that works for all. Here in the Central Ohio region, we serve more than 62,000 small business clients, almost 750,000 consumer clients through our 60-plus branch network, and proudly employ 18,000 Central Ohioans here, making us one of the largest private employers in the state. Our commitment to Columbus is not only about serving clients, providing leading products and services, but it's also about being an integral part of this community to help grow and succeed. We know that healthy communities are vital to our businesses, and showing up in the community and being a partner in both good times and in bad is in our firm's DNA. By leveraging our expertise and our insights and resources, working in close partnership with local elected officials, community, and business leaders, we tailor this support to address the very unique needs of this community. At the same time, we're fostering an environment where everyone has an opportunity to succeed. One of the ways that we do this is by investing in Columbus's workforce. As many of you know, Central Ohio is one of the fastest growing regions in the Midwest and is one of the home of one of the fastest growing economies in the nation. It's exceptional. So now more than ever, Ohioans need some skills and expertise to meet these demands of an evolving workforce. As employers, we know that we can play a vital role in these efforts. For us, strengthening Ohio's workforce by investing in career-connected education, skills training, and work-based learning experience, including emerging industries that demand highly technical skills. For example, we're working with organizations like Ohio Excels, giving young people real-world work experiences to help them access high-wage, in-demand jobs in industries like IT and in healthcare. Most recently, JP Chase supported a regional workforce collaborative led by One Columbus, dedicated to removing barriers to employment and equipping job seekers with what they need to thrive. Together, we're not only preparing people for the jobs of today, we're helping to shape the future. So as you listen to the conversation today, I encourage every one of you to think about the role that you can play in this journey. Your contributions will be essential to the city's success. So now, without further delay, I'm very excited to zoom in on our topic of Columbus's workforce. Thank you.
Welcoming back to the stage, Erica Pandy.
Hello again. I'm excited to get started with our first conversation today. So without further ado, let's welcome a longtime Ohio education and workforce leader, President of Ohio Excels, Lisa Gray. Welcome, Lisa. I think we're probably the two best dressed that you'll see today.
Well,
I love this outfit.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome to Axios, Lisa. At Ohio Excels, one of the big, if not the big thing you're focusing on, is this disconnect that's been there for a long time between K through 12 education and what comes next, whether that's a job, the military, or any number of other options. So from your 30,000-foot view, how have we gone wrong? Is education too theoretical, not practical enough? Are students not aware of all the options they have beyond a four-year degree? Is it all of the above, none of the above? What went wrong?
So I'm going to pivot a little bit and say that there are absolutely some things that we can do better. But I think part of the disconnect is that the economy is changing so quickly. We have rapid technological advances. I feel like I have my back to you folks over there. And I'd hate to not let you look at me today in my pretty dress. And so, I also think that when we think about education, for so long, education was about getting kids a diploma. And if you had a high school diploma, you could find a good paying job. And I think, you're going to hear from people today that are going to reiterate what I'm saying, which is, if you don't have something beyond a traditional high school diploma, it is very unlikely that you're going to be able to be economically self-sufficient. And so I think, we've got to make changes in our K through 12 system. I think workforce is changing significantly. I think there's a lot of messaging and communications that we're not getting through to kids and families, and frankly, our educators, about what it is that kids are going to need to be successful.
So I want to highlight this one stat, and you spoke to this a little bit about it's the economy that's changed, but more than a third of 18 to 24-year-olds in the U.S. reported no income through wages or salary in 2022.
She met my children.
That's according to the St. Louis Fed. But the crazy part is that's up from about 22% in 1990. So that tells me, and also today's 20-somethings are likelier to be living at home than they were, though I think Columbus and Ohio are well below the national average. So kids are leaving the house here. But this tells me, though, that something was working in the way we were preparing young people that maybe is broken now. What happened? Is it the economy? Are there other factors?
Well, I think I think it's complicated. I think there are a lot of factors. I think there's COVID. We are still recovering from that. If anybody tells you that we are back to normal, we are not. Chronic absenteeism is at all-time highs, and in many places is still as high as it was during the pandemic. The world of work is changing. I think, and I will use my own personal examples. When I said to my kids, follow your passion, they apparently did not understand that meant code for get a job and move out of the basement. And so I think there's a disconnect between the opportunities that are available to kids and what they know about. And so part of what we want to do is begin those conversations earlier. The economy is tough. I think, I read something yesterday that said 50% of college graduates are underemployed. The economy is part of it. I think the pandemic, I think our education system. So I think there are a lot of pieces that need to come together to make this work.
You've said when we've talked about this that we can't just think about preparing kids for what's next when they're seniors in high school.
Way too late.
It actually starts as early as kindergarten, you've said, without freaking the parents out in the audience too much. What do you mean by it starts in kindergarten?
So what I mean about it starts in kindergarten, and what I will say is, for all of you that have young kids, we are not talking about slotting a kindergartner into a career path. I often say if that was the case, my oldest would be Batman. And he's close, he's a comedian. But what we are talking about is how do you begin to build kids' skills? So 64% of kids come into kindergarten already behind in the state of Ohio. 64%. In some school districts, it's even higher. Our kids are not reading at grade level. We have 40% of our kids that are not reading at grade level across the state. Again, in some districts, much higher. Math, abysmal. We think our literacy numbers are bad, our math numbers are worse. So when I talk about how do we begin preparing kids earlier, it's about making sure that kids have those fundamental academic skills tied to how do we help them understand about careers and opportunities. Many of us in the audience probably have those conversations with our kids at dinner. We talk about when they say, they're watching TV and they want to be a forensic scientist. We're probably saying, well, good. You probably need to learn math and like science and not be sickened by blood. But those conversations are not necessarily happening at home for all of the kids that we're talking about. And so there's got to be a fundamental shift in how we're educating kids and beginning to talk to them about the opportunities that are available to them, not just in Ohio, but in the region that they live in. When we think about Ohio, I always think of it as a state of city-states. The economy in the regional workforce in Cleveland is different to some degree than the regional workforce in Columbus and Cincinnati and Dayton and Northeast Ohio. So how do we help kids understand not only what are the opportunities that are available to them, what it takes to earn those opportunities? When I talk to a senior in high school who says, I want to be a doctor, and then they tell you that they took no science classes or didn't pass, there's just a fundamental disconnect. So we've got to be, I think, much more disciplined in making sure that all kids have this information. We have to help educators know what's out there. So, one of the roles, I think, we often talk about what's, not working in the education system, but I think that there is a fundamental need for the business community to also work with the education system to articulate what are the knowledge and skills that kids need. How do we help students get that, whether it's through work-based learning opportunities, project-based learning. It doesn't always have to be kids leaving the classroom. Businesses can push into the classroom and do case studies and do those kinds of things. But we can't forget about making sure that the teachers have this information as well.
And Ohio Excels is about bringing business and government and educators together to enact some of these solutions. What have you seen that you've done that has worked really well for Ohio students?
So we're coming off a state budget where it's hard for me to cheer. There were a lot of things that we were hoping we could get more of around career-connected learning. I do think that there is a real commitment from the top, from the governor's office, from the lieutenant governor, from the Department of Education and Workforce. The fact that we've changed the name to the Department of Education and Workforce, I think, is it signals that we understand this connection between education and the workforce. We're seeing lots of great examples of businesses leaning in. JP Morgan Chase is an example of that. Worthington Industries is doing a lot of that work. I know Dave Harrison is going to be up next. He'll talk about some of the partnerships, I'm sure, with other businesses in the community. I think what we have to do, though, as an education system is find ways to make it easier for businesses to engage in school. And so, I'll just give a brief example. If you're Battelle, and somebody comes to you and says, we want your scientists to come out, to Columbus City Schools, Dublin, Hilliard, Groveport, pick your district, they probably are having to fill out different forms for every single one of those school districts. And so how do we make it easier for businesses to engage, to lean in? What are the supports that we can help provide? Because it's not their fundamental business. I think they want to be helpful, but they need that handoff.
So those are some of those macro changes that institutions can do. What should happen around the dinner table? Like, what can parents do to help their kids?
Well, remind them that they do need to move out earlier, starting in kindergarten. No, I'm kidding. I think parents have to have really honest conversations with kids. I think when kids I think oftentimes we look at kids with a deficit mentality. I think we've got to flip that script. We've got to look at kids and say, okay, what are you good at? Where are your passions? Where can we make, if you've got a kid that's constantly taking things apart, and maybe not knowing how to put them back together, how do you get them into a robotics program? How do you get them into a Lego program? How do you support work in the STEM fields for that child? If you have a child that's particularly artistic and creative, talk about the kinds of opportunities that are out there for kids and begin to get them thinking about what they can do instead of always telling kids what they can't do. And I think, Dr. Chapman says this a lot. Kids can't be what they don't see. And so we've got to find ways to make those connections for kids. But we also have, a lot of parents, I am shocked at the number of people that I talk to that have no idea that Intel is coming. So we're all in this bubble, but there are people out there that aren't following that. And so how do we begin to have those conversations and make sure people really know what's available in their communities?
I want to ask you about AI, which
Okay.
is always the elephant in the room when we talk about developing future talent.
Yep.
Survey after survey tells us that both college students and K through 12 students are nervous about how AI is going to affect their job prospects, but it is absolutely changing faster than educators can keep up. How do you think about how we can tackle this huge change that's, going to be here before we know it? It's already here,
Right.
None of us know what to do.
Yeah, so I'm glad I'm going to be retiring soon because it's probably going to take my job too. I think that, we have to look, so AI is everywhere. It's not coming, it's here. I think one of the positives about where kids are right now is they're digital natives. They're far more comfortable with technology than we were. They're willing to try it. They're, even our younger kids. AI can be an absolute blessing for teachers. So it can help teachers, routinize some of the lesson planning they do. I think what I'm most excited about for AI in education is the ability to personalize instruction. So, you can pretty quickly figure out where your kids are at. And if somebody needs help on fractions, we're doing that, or long division, or that sort of thing. I do think, part of the preparation that we need to do in K-12, and we help support an AI coalition. I mean, the first thing business said to us was do not ban AI in the classroom. They have to learn to live with it and use it. And I think it's going to change jobs, but I don't think it's going to completely eliminate jobs. So, we need to pay attention to it. We need to find ways to use it in a productive way, but I also don't think we can panic.
We did talk about a lot of the, maybe changes that are happening, some of the scary stuff that's happening. Why is it better to be an Ohio high school senior in 2025 versus 2005?
Well, one, I think that Ohio economically is doing better. Certainly in this region, we've got a lot of opportunities for students. I think when we look at the ability for seniors to access, complete, and afford higher ed after high school, whether we're talking about getting credentials, a 2-year or a 4-year. I'm not going to leave out military, but that's always been there as an option. So, I think that the state has done a lot to make sure that we focus on that transition. Can we do more? Absolutely. But I think the future is bright in Ohio, especially in Central Ohio.
Lisa, that is all the time we have. Thank you so much for your time. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Introducing our View from the Top moderator and Axios publisher, Nicholas Johnston.
Oh, good morning, everyone. This is such a great turnout on a beautiful Ohio morning. I'm Nicholas Johnston. I'm the publisher of Axios. Thank you so much for being here in support of our efforts. Hopefully, all of you are also subscribers to the awesome Axios Columbus local newsletter here in town. We couldn't do any of this without the support of a lot of our readers. And of course, I'm hugely grateful to the partners who make everything we do at Axios possible. Events like this, the investments we're making in journalism around the country, none of that would be possible without the support of our partners. So we're hugely grateful to JP Morgan Chase for making this conversation possible, also working with us almost since the beginning of Axios, both here in Ohio and around the country. And so very grateful for their support today and very excited to welcome to the stage for a View from the Top conversation, JP Morgan Chase's Wealth Management Regional Director and Ohio Market Leadership Team Co-Chair, Jeremy Young. Jeremy, welcome to the Axios stage.
Yo.
Good morning. Great to see you. It's a big title. It's probably a big job. Why don't we start with a little bit of an introduction? Tell us a little bit about your role at the bank and how it fits into what JP Morgan Chase is doing around Ohio and here in Columbus.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Well, first off, it's great to see everybody in the room, and I know it's like 4 seasons, 4 weathers in one day. So welcome to Ohio again, Nick.
We got summer this morning.
A couple of things. You know, as the day job is I work with the U.S. Wealth Management Team in Ohio. It's an honor and an opportunity. Secondly, I co-chair the Market Leadership Team for JP Morgan. What that really means is, like events today, we get up every day to help our communities, from Cincinnati to Cleveland to Dayton, the whole state. We partner together, Nick, and with lines of business. We engage with our customers, making sure that they have what they need. Because we don't have clients, we don't have a community. If we don't have clients, we don't have jobs. And I think, as we'll talk today, that tide raises all boats. So we're excited to collaborate. And lastly, it's about making the world smaller. Every day in Columbus and throughout Ohio, we get up every day talking with our community relations team I see out in the audience, other lines of business, conversing about topics to make sure we deliver it here in the great state of Ohio.
So interesting bit of history. JP Morgan Chase has over 2 centuries of experience in Ohio through some of the predecessor banks. That's a huge, long time.
Yeah.
You've seen this state change a lot. From your vantage point, talk a little bit about the state now and how you view it. Like, what are the opportunities for business?
Well, obviously, you know, horse and buggies were a thing in the back in the history of Ohio. But I think about evolution. I think about Ohio. I personally think it's a great state. I've lived in other states. It's great to be in Ohio, born and raised, Columbus native via Dayton, Ohio. I think the big thing that we look for is how we can partner on that evolution. You know, you've got infrastructure. We're centrally located. We've got resources. In the last couple years, many folks are starting to see what that means in terms of jobs and growth. But what's happening the last couple years has been, the foundation's been laid 10, 15, 20 years ago. Folks in this room, folks on our team, it's about making that world smaller. So when you think about the opportunity for us and as it evolved, it might have went from agricultural manufacturing to advanced manufacturing to tech. So as a state, we've got to continue to evolve. We at JP Morgan Chase want to be on the forefront of that. We want to continue to understand how we can lead from the front, because again, at the end of the day, that tide raises all boats.
Yeah.
And what's good for business is obviously, most importantly, good for our communities.
Let's keep talking about that evolution change. Like, just because it's been changed doesn't mean it's stopped changing. Like, what do you tell clients? How do you help your clients navigate that continued change?
Well, there's always a lot of turbulence. So when you think about the changing, especially workforce, and making sure, we feel at JP Morgan Chase employees are our greatest asset. You know, you have AI, you have different things, but you know, it's the human power and the connectivity that we bring to the community. So like, as we're working with our clients and prospects, you got to understand, we like to say we're big when it counts, small when it matters. So we've got folks all across the globe, you know, whether it be tariffs, whether it be things that are happening in the Middle East. We're back in Columbus, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Dayton, in the great state of Ohio, helping small businesses, consumers. We have over 3 million consumer clients in Ohio, 200,000 business clients. I see some of my colleagues. And when you think about that, we have over 20,000 employees in Ohio waking up every day, right? Our Columbus hub, for example, you know, it's a big tech innovation. So like, whether it's having folks come in and understand how to code with a big coding event, or you know, inspiring other youth that are coming to our campus, those are the things that we need to evolve in terms of this transformation to make sure we leave no individual, whether it's in Columbus or Dayton, behind.
Let's dig in a little bit more on like workforce and employability. Yeah. How do you think about like preparing workers for these kinds of changes? How do you even think about that internally at JP Morgan, as like helping people succeed in the future, unclear of where it's going?
Well, you know, personally, 28 years ago, I started out as a teller. And I don't know how many times you can tell, you know, if you walk into a bank, tellers aren't going to exist anymore. Well, they're still there, but they got skilled up. So personally at our firm, whether it's someone that used to do something 20 years ago, when we opened up our Polaris headquarters to today, that evolves. And so internally, we make sure we take care of our own. Because if your North Star is your employees are your best asset. You've got to reward them, train them, motivate them.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we try to lead with our consultative approach with our clients. You know, if they are having the same challenges, we can sit down and go knee to knee and say, hey, we've had the same situation. Hey, we're neighbors, right? We officially may not be headquartered here, but like Tim Berry said in his annual shareholder letter, it's like, you know, we love to show up and be like the second headquarters here in Columbus. And as an Ohioan, as a Buckeye state, we take great pride in that. So it's going and having that relationship to say, hey, we've been here before in the Midwest. You know, we've helped over these, you know, couple hundred years. Here's what we've seen has worked. But also, like our competitors, it's a great thing, right? When you have competition and you have access to capital and resources and thoughts, that is going to help everyone. And so I think that's, at least from our perspective, a very healthy thing for Ohio and specifically Columbus.
I think we've got a lot of business leaders in the room, and it was interesting that you mentioned, like, you know, JP Morgan Chase's footprint here, like tens of thousands of employers. What advice would you give to other business leaders in the room on how to best support their workforce, best hire the best talent, you know, like prepare their employees for the future?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would put an asterisk. We're not perfect. But I think being an employee that I've never had a job out of college except this firm, it was a heritage firm of Bank One, is I've always felt appreciated, supported, and respected. And so you go back to your employees and you say, gosh, do they feel supported, respected, and appreciated? Then you think about opportunities, right? You got to have, and you got to have a great company, because if you're not growing, you don't have opportunities for promotion. And so it starts with the leadership, but you've got to understand that reverse pyramid where, like, you know, I work for my team. I work for my customers. And so you got to have that ability to connect, especially in a competitive workforce. I know many of you are probably looking for top talent, retaining top talent. So you got to have also competitive benefits. You got to have other things that matter to them, whether it's daycare, whether it's other benefits. And I think I'm very excited about what benefit package we have, but also I've got great leadership, and I know that I've been able to provide for my family, and so kind of why would I look elsewhere? So I think for us, we go back and you know, we've done a couple grants with local folks. We've given over short of $15 million since 2019, Nick, regarding workforce development and skill up and partnerships. So those are the types of things that we need, that collaboration between nonprofit, for-profit, and public sector to collaborate.
But, I mean, when you talk about top talent, it seems like it's something you've thought about a lot, right? Yeah. Like, you wouldn't have a business without clients, but you also wouldn't have a business without those, you know, the people who make it run. And so, like, how important, I mean, maybe this is like, I know the answer to this question before I ask it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Yeah. How important is finding and recruiting and keeping those top performers at a company?
Yeah, for us and for other of our clients, you know, it's the differentiation. Whether you own a machine shop and you've got an aging individual that like looking for retirement, and you got to retain or transfer the skill. Same thing for us. When you think about the skill up of AI, or you think about the booming economy or boomers that are retiring, you want to retain the top talent, but you also want to nurture the person that just started. You know, who could be the next Nick? Who could be the next superstar? To identify those. So identifying talent, having a path, having mentors, whether that's official, unofficial, having a culture again that you can feel and sense, and being inclusive and understanding the diversity of thought, understanding, and again, that's how we just kind of think about Ohio in terms of how we can serve, and you need that to be able to be able to deliver and exceed your customers' expectations. It starts with the people.
I think that's great advice for the business leaders in the room. We're about to get the hook here, but at Axios, I'd like to end on one fun thing. I want to end this one on one Columbus thing. Ohio native, longtime Columbus person. Yeah. What is the best part about a Columbus for folks out of town? What's the one thing I should go see or do before I go to the airport this afternoon?
Okay, well, I wanted to weave in too, also, many of you had this. So I think this is a cool recap nationally of what we're doing. And it's we got a nice video out there. Here's what I would say. He has a red tie on. So first off, it's three F's. Food. So Columbus is headquartered of many food. It's got a vibrant food scene throughout the Columbus, and it's thriving. So that's first off. All right. I didn't get that elsewhere. Secondly, when you think about fashion, right? We've got the number one amount of fashion employees concentration in America. Other fun fact, outside of New York and LA, fashion designers, Columbus, Ohio.
Right.
And the last one you're going to help me with is F for football. You got a red tie on. Anywhere in the country, if you throw out OH, that you get the IO, Nick. That's what Columbus, Ohio is all about.
All right. I think I got it. I'm glad I wore the right tie to this one. Jeremy, thanks so much for being here. Huge thanks to JP Morgan Chase for making this possible. I'm going to bring one of the stars of Axios Columbus upstage now. Alyssa, come on out.
Thank you.
Jeremy.
Please welcome to the stage Axios Columbus reporter Alyssa Widman-Neese.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for being here with us. I'm Alyssa Widman-Neese, and I co-author the Columbus newsletter with my colleague Andrew King and my editor Tyler Buchanan. If you're not already subscribed to it, please be sure to head to axios.com/Columbus to get smarter, faster about the biggest stories that are shaping Central Ohio right now. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome our next guest. Please welcome the president of Columbus State Community College, Dr. David Harrison. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to start with kind of a broad question, but I'm wondering if you can help us understand what career fields are the top priorities for Columbus State right now when it comes to developing the local workforce pipeline and what you need to do to adapt to meet those needs for those fields.
So really, our current priorities fall in three broad areas. One is information technology, and that's one we've really been building a foundation for the last decade, and have seen really good results, including unique arrangements with employers that didn't exist before. Engineering technology, largely fueled by Intel initially, we can talk more about that, but those advanced manufacturing jobs have been a priority for our region for a long time, but Intel kind of gave it a brand. So that has really moved some things forward. And then in rooms like this, we don't talk about healthcare enough. And healthcare jobs are plentiful and in every community, and are really great opportunities for our students and for our citizens more broadly. So those three areas have been our priorities. There are others, culinary and many other construction trades and other programs that continue to thrive, but those are three that are strategic priorities for us.
Okay. Well, let's talk about Intel a bit then. Obviously, we can't have an event like this without talking about them and the semiconductor factories that are being built just outside of Columbus. I'm wondering how that investment has changed your approach, and if you could talk a bit about programs that might funnel some folks to a job opportunity there.
I think one of the enduring values that Intel has provided is it's given us all kind of a proxy to talk about advanced technologies and advanced manufacturing jobs. And even as the fabs in Licking County may be delayed, it still is continuing that conversation. There's a brand associated with it. But these jobs aren't just about Intel. And Amgen was the state's biggest economic development deal before Intel, and they just announced an additional investment. So this new industry around gene therapy and biotechnology is something that's going to be with us for decades, hopefully in perpetuity. And as Intel was making its announcement, Honda announced a partnership with LG to make batteries just south of here. That was going to bring, or is bringing, 2,500 new jobs to Central Ohio, but it's also keeping the 15,000 jobs that Honda's had here for 40 years. So that baseline really made a difference. And you can think about EV technology and semiconductor manufacturing and bioscience as three different industries. But as we were working with all of them, we knew they were all going to hire from each other. So that same baseline technical skill set, something that's transferable from industry to industry. So when you think about it from a student's perspective, the ability to have choices once you get these technology-based certificates or degrees is something that can really help them thrive throughout their career. So Intel, I think, has helped create an ecosystem. It's helped connect some dots, I think, regionally and statewide that are allowing us to grow into other fields that'll, again, stand the test of time.
And I'm wondering, putting myself in a student's position, is a 2-year or a 4-year degree the end goal for them, or are there alternatives? And I'm also wondering, would those alternatives hold the same kind of weight in the job market as maybe the more traditional pathway?
Well, I think students of all ages need to look at it as a lifelong process. And where you start is not going to be where you end up. And especially now as the job market changes, that continuous growth is going to have to be, is probably the most important employable skill set that a student can have. And the job market is changing dramatically. The bachelor's degree is an entry-level requirement for fewer and fewer jobs in every industry. So the ability for students to start their career with a certificate or an associate degree doesn't mean that the bachelor's degree isn't important, but it may not be critical for that first job. The other value in that process is it really does open up doors to eliminate student debt. You've got so many students who have the bachelor's degree as the first credential and are taking on mountains of debt and still not finding gainful employment. So the ability to come in with a skill set that is employable and then have the employer pay for your bachelor's degree is something that we see a lot of students doing. We've had a partnership with Honda and Worthington and others where that's been going on for more than a decade now. And that kind of continuum, I think, is something that's going to continue to accelerate.
Well, I think that would have sounded pretty attractive to 18-year-old me, the no debt component. Right. That sounds pretty good.
I say all the time, debt is a choice, and people don't believe me when I say that, but there are so many options for students to make that avoidable. And we're lucky in Central Ohio because we've got employers that are leaning in creative ways. We've just got to help more people understand that.
Well, one fairly new program that I definitely wanted to talk about was the Columbus Promise. I know that's gained a lot of attention recently. It's a program that provides local Columbus graduates from Columbus City Schools a free opportunity for a college education at Columbus State. And I know it's still new, but is there a way to sort of measure that return on investment? Like, do you know if the students who are going through that are going to be heading elsewhere, or are they going to try and stay here in our local workforce pipeline?
I can't speak for every student, but these students are from here and they're gonna stay here by and large. Columbus Promise, I was just talking about student debt. I mean, this is a great example of how the community has come together to make sure that finances aren't going to be a barrier to students moving forward. A little bit of background. So I was at a community event in 2019. And Council President Shannon Hardin came up to me after and said, "Hey, I got an idea I want to run by you. Let's get together." And we did, and that idea was Columbus Promise. Wow. So his team and some Columbus State folks started working on what that might look like. And then COVID hit. George Floyd was murdered. There was a lot going on in early 2020 that derailed that conversation for obvious reasons. And then as we started seeing students coming to Columbus State with the COVID experience they had in high school, the learning loss was already evident just in the first year and certainly in the second year. So I called President Hardin back and I said, "Hey, if this is still something you're interested in, it's needed more than ever." So we got back together pretty quickly, put a path forward. The city put $5 million in. Columbus State put $1 million in. We were able to raise $5 million locally. Thank you to the private sector who stepped up in incredible ways. And we're able to launch it in 2022 for the class of 2022. So phase one kind of had the class of 2022, 23, and 24 for Columbus City Schools graduates. As you said, every graduate can come to Columbus State for 3 years tuition free. And there are many other wraparound services that are part of that. From the beginning, we saw twice as many Columbus City Schools graduates who graduated in May come to Columbus State that fall. And not only that, not only were there more students, but the success rates of those students actually exceeded the success rates of those graduates prior to the pandemic. So we had a test case early on that it worked. And we've gotten better at it each year. Again, we were drawing plays in the dirt when this first started happening. If you think about 2020, 2021, 2022. And now we really do feel like we've got a repeatable process. So we've just recently launched what we're calling Promise 2.0. And the city has now put $10 million in. The corporate community, the private sector is again being incredibly generous as we put that forward. And we've got the classes of 25, 26, and 27 that we're working through now, all towards, frankly, an ultimate goal of trying to sustain it for Columbus City Schools, but also scale it throughout our region, at least throughout Franklin County. And we're working through different options on how to do that.
Well, we'll be sure to keep an eye on that. I'd love to follow up with some students about what their experience has been like.
Oh, we'd love to connect you with some students, yeah.
That'd be great. And then on the other end of the spectrum, how is Columbus State working to reduce barriers for adult learners and some of those non-traditional students who maybe are looking for a career change or some new skills?
I mean, at some level, all of our students are adults. And we really look at it that way. And even our youngest students lead complicated lives. All of our students work. Many of them have family responsibilities. Our adult students in particular are a group that we've been good at serving for a long time. We've got a strong veteran population. We've got a lot of students who are working full time in other jobs that we're helping support. But we're also trying to eliminate key barriers in that regard. And childcare, transportation, housing, even food are barriers that we try to eliminate. We talk about making help unavoidable, and that's especially important for our adult students. So having on-campus childcare has been a real important step going forward. The ability to help them understand that they aren't going to be the only ones like them in their classes, and getting over that initial barrier is difficult. But the learning environment that creates a real diverse group in our classes, where we've got students of all ages that are part of that, it really becomes an ecosystem that is again a powerful learning opportunity for both our adult students and our younger students.
Great. Well, we're about to be out of time. I'm wondering if there's any takeaway you want to leave for folks in the audience.
Thank you for that. I want to thank JP Morgan Chase. I won't go into the detail because we're already in red numbers here on the clock, but Chase has been an incredible partner pretty much the whole time I've been at Columbus State, and I've been in this role for 15 years. And the venture capital that Chase provides really allows us to do the kind of work that I just talked about. And the ability to come in and partner with us as opposed to dictate how to use the funding really matters, because that allows us to build on the strengths we already have. But having Chase's support really provides the mortar for the bricks of the projects that we're working on as a college and as a community. So I appreciate the opportunity to just extend that gratitude to Chase. They've been great partners.
Great. Well, we are out of time, but thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm staying here, but. And for our final discussion this morning, I'm excited to welcome up to the stage Columbus Mayor Andrew Ginther.
How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Great
Good to see you.
again.
Great crowd.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Well, I'm going to start with a big picture look. Workforce development, as we've discussed today, is a complex puzzle with many pieces. There's educators, employers, nonprofits, and governments like yours. And what do you see as the city's role in aligning all of that? Can you lay that out for us?
Well, it's critically important. You know, we were facing a global pandemic, the economic fallout associated with that, greatest reckoning on race in this country probably since 1968. We knew that when we were thinking about a recovery, that we wanted it to be dynamic and inclusive. And at the core of that is workforce and preparation and investing in people. Particularly, the overwhelming majority of folks in our community are doing better than ever before. But about a third of our region, our community, has not shared in Columbus's success. So we put together with the private sector and other nonprofit philanthropic leaders a recovery and resiliency committee back in 2020 and 2021 that said, okay, after the Great Recession, there was a recovery, but not everyone shared in that recovery as quickly as others. In fact, disproportionately poor neighbors only got back to where they were pre-Great Recession when the pandemic hit. And they were in total free fall. And so, and the economy dramatically changed, as you remember, during that period of time. So we said we need to really focus on making sure that as this recovery took place that we've seen over the last couple of years, that it included everybody. And so we made significant investments. Childcare, as you know, got turned upside down. Something like 41% of childcare centers closed during the pandemic, never reopened. Devastating impact on women in the workforce. Obviously held a lot of families back from reaching their full potential during this recovery. And so we did a couple of things, doubled down and invested in childcare workers and childcare centers, opened up a $25 million center on the Hilltop, the early learning center there, because what we discovered was there were fewer kids on the Hilltop enrolled in high quality early learning than anywhere else in the city. And as Dr. Harrison talked about, an unprecedented, exciting partnership. Incredible, another example of the Columbus way, the Columbus promise. I mean, the last term, I don't know if Dr. Harrison is still here, I think we had 848 graduates of Columbus City Schools enrolled. It's continuing to grow each year. A great opportunity. So nobody was more negatively impacted by the pandemic and the fallout than our young people. In the Columbus Promise, I think we're going to look back as one of the greatest game changers, not just with respect to opportunities, but I envision our community becoming America's opportunity city, the nation's capital for upward mobility, in a place you're more likely to go from poverty to the middle class and beyond than anywhere else. And the Columbus Promise is going to be a key part of that.
And I want to go back to what you're mentioning with childcare. I think that's a good example of some of those topics and challenges that we're facing as a rapidly growing city, where at first glance they may not seem like a workforce development issue, but they really are. And two that we often hear about in Columbus are public transportation needs and housing needs. Can you help folks understand why those are workforce issues and what you're doing to address those problems?
Absolutely right. Our three top priorities and focus at the city are safety, housing, and transit. And we have to continue. We've seen record reductions, not just in this city, but in cities across America in violent crime, which is great. It's due to the great work of the Division of Police and our community. I think the police and community are working closer together now than ever before, and that's why we're seeing such great success. Safety is a workforce development and economic development issue, but so is housing and transit. And we all know that We're about 200,000 units short in this region that we need to bring online in the next 10 years. And so Columbus Promise was a great example of Columbus Way. The Regional Housing Coalition is another great example of the Columbus Way. And so I see Jason Hall and his colleagues here from the partnership. This is going to be a new effort incubated at the partnership. So when you think about Columbus 2020 and One Columbus and what that has been to economic development, the Regional Housing Coalition is going to be that for housing. And this group is going to wake up every day figuring out how do we get 200,000 units in the pipeline in this region in the next 10 years. And by the way, it's more of all. We need more market rate. We need more workforce. We need more affordable housing. We have a supply crisis. And you go back to Econ 101, and if your supply is flat and demand continues to grow, you know why so many folks in this community right now are feeling that squeeze, particularly if they're lower wage earners, folks on fixed income, seniors. They're feeling this squeeze right now. But it's impacting a lot of young people too. I mean, looking around the room, how many folks have grown adult children that are living in your basements because they can't afford the down payment and rents? I see some hands go.
I know Lisa's back there.
We need to free the basements up of Central Ohio and get these folks in housing. And these are folks that are working hard, playing by the rules, but because home prices and rents are growing faster than wages, the best way for us to fight homelessness, to provide more opportunities for young people and continue to be attractive as a region is to get those 200,000 units in the pipeline. I really appreciate Jason and the partnership's engagement on this. And I'd really say in the last 20 years, the business community thought this was the right thing to do, getting people in housing, fighting homelessness. I think it's really been in the last 5 or 10 years when this supply crisis has really impacted everybody in this community that folks have realized this is an economic development issue. We cannot continue on this trajectory with respect to job creation, economic development, an incredible 10, 20-year run without more housing.
And with the coalition, the thinking is that can't be something that Columbus is trying to address on its own. It needs to be a broader regional approach.
So I've spent a lot of time visiting with folks around the region and I've raised our hand. I said Columbus will do 100,000 of the 200,000 units. We're updating our zoning code for the first time in 70 years. The first chapter of Zone In passed unanimously by council to a standing ovation. When was the last time a major zoning code overhaul took place in any city across the country where there wasn't, a true divided civil war going on? And so, but you mentioned transit, and the transformational Link Us issue that passed overwhelmingly by voters last fall is going to be another game changer, another incredible public-private partnership just along the Link Us corridors. Before Zone In, we were expecting 8,000 units along the major transit corridors of the region. Just with the passage of the first part, because we're going to do 3 different steps in the Zone In process, that number of units goes up to 88,000. Almost what we need as a city over the next 10 years just along these Link Us corridors, which is so critically important with respect to transit supportive infrastructure, transit-oriented development. And if we do it the right way and embrace density and height, we can fight off gentrification and displacement.
Well, I know you just rolled out a proposed capital budget this week, and I'm wondering if there's anything in there that we should be keeping an eye on when it comes to the workforce issues.
Oh, there are so many things that you should keep an eye on.
We've got 5 minutes. So we'll see how
Where
much
do I
we can get
start? In this, I'll make a differentiation. So we have a capital budget that I've introduced, but we also have a bond package that'll be on the ballot this fall. We do these bond packages about every 3 or 4 years. So a lot of you are used to voting for these things. And it's great because I think longtime auditor Hugh Dorian, I think maybe in his senior undergraduate program back in the 1950s, helped us create the SIT program. So a quarter of every dollar we receive in income tax revenue, we put in the SIT so that we're able to get public voted debt through these bond packages without levying a property tax. We haven't levied a property tax as a city since 1956. So thank you, Mr. Dorian, for putting this incredible program in place. But because we get public voted authority, there's much more interest in having this public voted authority without raising taxes. Saves us millions and millions of dollars of interest, but it allows us to invest in our neighborhoods, create jobs, which then generates income tax revenue, which then supports basic city services. 80% of basic city services are funded by local income tax revenue, which is critically important. So, fourth water plant, that's part of the current capital budget plan, $50 million for housing, additional investments in police substations at some of the most important job centers. A lot of people don't realize Easton is the second biggest job center in Central Ohio, only outside of downtown Easton. And those are not the mall jobs and the restaurant jobs. We're talking about Alliance Data, we're talking about MI, we're talking about Huntington, we're talking about all the major other employers that are around Easton. So having safety and security being top of mind with the new Easton sub is critically important. Other critical investments are going to be, has anybody hit a pothole recently? A record number of investments in street resurfacing, biggest investment in fire apparatus. We continue to grow and open up new fire stations. And so fire apparatus is going to be a critical piece of that. But there's so many other things that we're doing, but we're excited about the bond package. Encourage everybody to get educated about it. Talk to your friends, neighbors, folks you work with about the bond package on the ballot this fall. $500 million for housing, the biggest housing investment in the city's history. And we can do it all by not raising taxes, creating jobs, and supporting basic city services.
Okay. We're getting down to the wire here, but there is one more initiative I wanted to chat about, which we wrote about recently in our newsletter, which is Smart Columbus's Digital Skills Hub, which is providing residents with free training and, if they qualify, a free device like a tablet or a laptop. And I was hoping you could talk about how serious our digital divide is here and how that might be affecting our pipeline of workers.
So in addition to childcare, it was one of the top issues that came out of the Recovery and Resiliency Advisory Committee. I think what we found out during the pandemic, that access to high-speed internet was no longer a luxury or an amenity. It was a requirement, a necessity. And if we didn't invest in access, the disparity that we saw laid bare during the pandemic would only grow, widen, and deepen. And so I'm really excited about this. This is the largest investment in digital equity anywhere in America. And again, another great example of the Columbus Way, great public and private partnership, the faith community, nonprofits, and others that are really, it's one thing to provide access, it's another thing to train and educate our neighbors on how to best use this technology. I think the greatest challenge of the 21st century is how do we, as a people, harness and leverage innovation and technology to help people improve their own lives. And this is a perfect example of that. And I think another reason why the recovery that we're seeing and that we're going to continue to see and the growth of this region is going to be dynamic and inclusive because we were purposeful and intentional about where we were going to invest, how we were going to invest, and continue to lift up neighbors who have been left out and left behind in this Columbus success story. We know that if we're all prospering and thriving and growing together, this community will have an incredible century ahead of it, but it will require us to make some difficult decisions in the next 5 or 10 years around land use, around transit, around housing, and around investments in workforce development. But I've never been more bullish about Central Ohio's future than now.
Well, I know you just recently finished a year as the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and as a note to end on, don't want you to talk badly about our peers, but I'm wondering what makes Columbus the best city to live in?
People. Yeah, it was an incredible blessing. It's the first time the mayor of Columbus has served as president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, an incredible honor. to represent cities across the country. And this conference in particular is very special to me because it's one of the last bipartisan organizations left in America. And that's really important to me because in this hyper-partisan, divided, sometimes rancorous national and state dialogue, mayors are still standing and delivering, doing incredible things. And so to serve as president, I want to thank the people of Columbus and my family for their flexibility and grace of the last year. I've spent a lot more time outside the city than I ever have before with those duties. But I think my wife and I were just as excited last Sunday to become the past president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors as we were becoming president a year ago. But thrilled to have those relationships and a chance to really lift up Columbus and tell our story nationally and even internationally. It was a great opportunity and a great blessing.
I'm glad you had a good experience and you were able to, represent us during your duties.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We are out of time, but I wanted to thank you again for joining us today. And I also wanted to thank the audience in the room and on our live stream for joining us too. We look forward to continuing to cover all of these topics in our newsletter, and we hope to see all of you at some future Axios events here in Columbus. I hear we're going to be having another one in about a month.
Great.
So I hope you all have a great rest of your morning, and don't forget to grab a cookie, if there's any left, and some free Axios swag, like a t-shirt or a water bottle, which are throughout the room.
Thank you.